A layout is one of the coolest things you can do in Ultimate Frisbee, and usually makes up for the fact that you play Ultimate Frisbee. However, it is one of the most difficult things to do if you have any ounce of self-preservation in your body, which I learned I did have, so I can give an in-depth personal analysis of what biomechanics you shouldn't use while laying out. Let's break down what a layout in Ultimate Frisbee is. Essentially, instead of jumping up high to catch a disc, you jump into a dive to either catch the disc on offense or block the disc on defense. Typically, you'll lay out either because 1. The disc was too low, 2. The disc was too far, or 3. Whoever threw you the disc did a really bad job and did both. The movement that is most similar in another sport would probably be a dive in softball, where the player jumps and extends their entire body to catch the ball. Where it differs from an Ultimate Frisbee layout would probably be the grip, which is used to catch a ball instead of a disc. So now that we've established what a layout is, let's go into the mechanics, starting with the preparation. The majority of this movement is going to move in the sagittal plane and overall move in linear motion. The goal of this stage is to build momentum by generating as many impulses as possible. Following Newton's first law of motion, I remain at rest until the force of moving my limbs pushes against the ground and initiates motion. According to Newton's third law of motion, my foot pushing on the ground creates an opposite force that will propel me forwards and upwards, which connects to the second law, where I will accelerate as long as the net force generated in the forwards direction is greater than 0. In this stage, I'm just running, so the dominant joints will be the hip, knee, ankle, and shoulders. I start in the loading phase, where my ankle starts dorsiflex on the ground, and the gluteus maximus and hamstring extends the hip. Quadriceps extend the knee, and gastrocnemius and soleus plantar flex, generating the force against the ground. The other leg is in the swing phase. The iliopsoas, rectus femoris, and other hip flexors flex the hip, and the gracilis, sartorius, and hamstring group flexes the knee. The ankle is dorsiflexed by the tibialis anterior and extensor muscles. Both legs cycle between the loading and swing phase to produce impulses that translate into momentum for the execution stage of the layout. Execution involves using the built-up momentum to translate into projectile motion. You push off of your leg using the same muscles as the loading phase of running. However, as you push off of the ground, your hip flexors drive rotation along the transverse axis, tilting your body forward and moving the center of gravity throughout the movement. Your shoulders should flex in order to catch the disc, contracting your deltoid, latissimus dorsi, pectoralis major, and extending the radial ulnar joint using the triceps brachii. The rhomboids and trapezius will stabilize the scapula as you extend your arm, with rotator cuff muscles stabilizing the shoulder joint by isometrically contracting. The elbow will be supinated by the supinator muscle to grab the disc from underneath. There are a lot of muscles involved in grabbing the disc, but primarily it'll involve flexing your flexor digitorums and flexor pollicis longus. The core muscles, including transverse abdominis, rectus abdominis, and obliques, should be eccentrically contracted to prevent hyperextension of the spine when you inevitably hit the ground, like in this clip. Lastly is your follow-through, which is basically what you should do to prevent a concussion or injury as you slam against the ground. Shoulders should remain flexed and elbows extended, with arms leading the layout and knees slightly bent. The center of mass should be close to your body and around your core to be as stable and in control of your landing as possible, and to absorb the impact with your legs and core instead of spine and back. The further the center of gravity is from your midline, the more momentum will pull the center of gravity in its direction, making it harder to maintain balance and stability, and potentially causing the body to flip and rotate when you land. You catch the disc one-handed supinated, you want to pronate the radial ulnar joint by using the pronator teres and quadratus. This is to prevent yourself from dropping the disc upon impact. As you hit the ground, the forces of friction will cause you to accelerate negatively until you stop. From this very explosive movement, you can probably guess that the dominant energy system is going to be the phosphagen system, but if you've already been running around on offense or just turned over the disc from defense, you may shift towards glycolysis as well. However, maximum performance will be using the phosphagen system. The muscle twitch fibers will primarily be type 2A or type 2B. In an isolated layout, type 2B fast twitch glycolytic fibers can give you that short burst of high intensity energy, since the layout is less than 10 seconds, especially during the push-off execution. However, in a real frisbee game, you need both endurance and power, so you'd probably incorporate some type 2A muscle fibers as well. In comparison to a professional, Kyle Hankey, my layout is barely a layout, and I barely even leave the ground. Hankey moves his legs faster, creating more impulses and more momentum, though he also has the help of the adrenaline from having 2 seconds left in his game. The range of movement when he runs and jumps is also at a much greater angle than the half jog I perform, which allows him to produce forces that are closer to his maximum force from every joint in his movements. His core is also more engaged, which allows for a more streamlined position in the center of gravity closer to his body. This professional also has more developed type 2A and type 2B muscle fibers compared to me, and therefore can produce these greater forces. As someone who tried to learn how to lay out in about 2 sessions, let's go over some tips and tricks and progressions to laying out. So most people don't really practice laying out. It sort of develops when you have the adrenaline of the game powering you and masking the pain afterwards, which means there's a pretty high chance of injury if you don't practice. Generally, the first progression is practicing approaching the ground with your arms out and chest first, without a disc. Then you can progress to laying out from about knee height, squat, then standing, then adding a few steps until you're comfortable with a running start. One-handed layouts will give you the greatest reach, especially if you begin with your elbow partially supinated. The best way to get better at laying out in game is to put yourself in situations that require it. Run deep lots, follow your mark closely on undercuts and uplines, and convince yourself to go for every single tip disc whether you think it's possible to catch or not. Now, because I'm not really sure what the video equivalent of 10 to 15 slides is, I'm going to assume I have some time to spare. So I asked all of my Frisbee friends to send me or do a few layouts for me, and I'm going to judge them based off their biomechanics. This is Rebecca. She's from Earl Haig, so I'm already inclined to give her a 0. I think she may be a self-proclaimed incapable of laying out, so I will be brief with my comments. This is Abigail. She doesn't actually go to Earl Haig despite her jersey, and she presents pretty good layout form as a seasoned layer outer. She's also strangely good at wrestling. This is Daniel. He automatically gets a 0 out of 10 because of all of the bad throws he threw to me while trying to record my layouts. This is Lucy. You've probably already seen her in this video, but she has similar form to me, and I fear for her spine every time I see her lay out. And lastly, I don't know who this is, but I'm pretty sure they have a concussion from all their bad form from trying to lay out so much.